We have three big races going on right now. We have District 3 in West Irving, which is up. And this is a scheduled election, meaning that the last election was 3 years ago, and this is the completion of Abdul Kabir's current term. And then, of course, we have what would you call it? Like a
special election.
Yes, there you go. Special election for District 6 because the current councilman, Al Ponta, has thrown in his hat for the mayoral race. And then, of course, we have the mayoral race.
Don't forget District 5. So Mark Cronenwit, current
correct.
councilman, highly respected, a leader on council, did not draw an opponent. So he will be reelected. Yeah. So no surprises in District 5.
Yeah, and congrats to Mark Cronenwit for being uncontested. I think that's a real testament to his leadership and to the way he's managed his office over the last 3 years. When nobody is willing to throw their hat in and say, "I'm going to go up against you," that means you've done a good job for the most part. At least you've made your constituents happy, right?
He has done a good job. There's also school board. There's a couple of school board races. We haven't covered this.
We have not.
But it is interesting because it's the first contested school board race in Irving in 5 years. So voters will have a choice, District 1 and District 2. So District 1 is University Park and Irving Heights. Tom Robles, who was appointed to a vacancy, so he's technically the incumbent versus Kelly Snap. Robles has a little bit of an edge probably in that race, but it's very competitive. And District 2, Miss Lee, Mary Llewellyn versus Heather Stroop, who actually ran against Mark Cronenwit and lost in that District 5 City Council race. And she's favored in that race. So if you're in those districts, District 2 is Northgate and north of North O'Connor. You get to vote, get to have a choice for school board.
Yeah.
But back to City Council, what we're actually covering.
Yeah, which seems to be the topic that's it interests me particularly. I think it's very interesting. I think, we'll end with the mayoral race, I think, because that's the one that everybody gets to vote in the mayoral race, and it probably is maybe the most consequential of the three races. Not to say that these single-member districts don't have consequence. They do. But I would like to start with District 3. District 3 is in West Irving. I guess you could say it's I haven't looked at the actual breakdown of demographics, but it's definitely an immigrant-heavy community or an immigrant-heavy district. Lots of Muslims, lots of Hindus, and coincidentally, I guess, or not coincidentally, we have essentially two Muslim candidates and a Hindu candidate running for that spot.
Yeah, municipal elections are low turnout.
Yes.
So that means they can be unpredictable and there can be surprises. And there can be excitement with what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So different communities can be mobilized because Irving is a very diverse city. It's a microcosm of the United States. There's these different communities. I'm thinking in 2021, Sunil Mosa versus Phil Riddle, who was the incumbent firefighter, and this candidate who really kind of had no business getting 800 votes, came out of nowhere to make this strong challenge because he mobilized his community.
And for those of you that that are just kind of tuning into local politics, to Irving local politics, in a single member district, 800 votes is a lot of votes. At least historically, that's been the case. Now we've had some recent elections where we're starting to see candidates get into the four figures. But at that time, especially for District 4, to get 800 votes was kind of for any candidate to get 800 votes was sort of unheard of. But
we encourage everybody to vote because these things can be decided by one vote, and we've seen that in the past in Irving with whether it goes to a runoff or not was decided by one vote. Elections in my District 1 are regularly decided by 40 or 50 votes. So
Yeah,
every
I think
vote really does
I
count.
think John Bullock won District 1 last year with around a 30 vote margin or somewhere in the 30s. I know in District 7, where I live, we had Adam Moeller pull out in front of Priscilla Viglianti with about a 50 vote margin. So if 25 people wake up that morning and decide to vote a different way, that election is going a different way. There's no question about it.
And District 3, you're starting with maybe the most exciting one, because there are 3 candidates in the race, and it is unclear which of them is going to win, who's going to be the front runner, who's going to make the runoff. You did an interview with the incumbent. Abdul
Correct.
Kabir.
Yeah. We talked with Abdul. This was actually yesterday. One of the things that we do in interviews is we try not to make them too contentious. We want the candidates to be able to speak for themselves. I think it's the most helpful way for a constituent to understand what their candidates stand for. Let them actually sit down and talk. And Abdul did quite a bit of talking. And I think Abdul, if I were to basically summarize what his pitch is for his voters and where he sees himself being different from his competition, is his experience and his connections. Right. That's what he's going to pitch. Is that he talked about a lot of developments like infrastructure developments in his district. Which, I think that if you're a councilman and these things happen under your watch, I think you have a right to brag about them to some degree. Me, as I guess you could say, as a skeptical constituent, the question that comes to my mind always is okay, would this development have happened regardless? Because a lot of times the city staff already has these projects underway. Sometimes they've been in the works for years on end, and they just happen to take place during your watch, right? So do you really have a right to brag about them?
I was thinking that watching the interview.
Well, no, again, and I don't want to be too critical, because I think that all city councilmen do this, right? And there are some developments, there are some changes that do happen specifically because of a councilman's leadership, right? So that's the real, I guess, question I think that the voters are going to have to ask themselves, like, would we still get these developments with or without our incumbent? But he does make a pitch that his experience, his connections, he has the ability to go and meet with people, kind of twist arms when he needs to, reach consensus. That's not for nothing. I think that there's something to be said about somebody that's well established in the community, has connections, and that's more or less what Kabir's pitch was yesterday. So.
Now, the funny thing is his connections are not backing him for re-election. So this is the striking thing about this race.
That is very strange.
And it's strange. Normally, advantage of incumbency is exactly what he described in that interview, which is, hey, I've got the connections, I can get things done, I have these friends, I've made these friends, I can leverage that to help the community. But when these members of council that you're saying are your connections actually aren't supporting you, but are supporting your opponent, that undercuts that argument. So that is the striking thing about this race. Is the Irving establishment really
they're going
against him?
Yeah, they're throwing their support behind Kajal Patel.
Kajal Patel, who is new on the scene.
Yeah, I've never heard of her.
I don't think she's run for anything before.
Has she been on boards? Do you know?
That is a good question. I have not heard her tout that.
Okay.
So her family owns a hospitality company. They own Embassy Suites off of 183.
Okay.
Which is a great hotel. So she helps run that hotel. And she has declined our requests for an interview.
Yeah.
Has declined our request for an interview. And I'm not so sure why she's running, because it looks like it's torture for her. It looks like a very painful experience for her, kind of when she has to speak publicly.
which is tough. I mean, if public speaking is a source of consternation, that's a big part of being a councilman, is you're having to meet with people a lot of times in large groups. And for an interview with us, it's just the two of us, or just having a discussion with her. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that would be like my biggest criticism of Kajal is, virtually everybody else in these races agreed to meet with us and have an interview, and she said no, or she dodged us. Did she ever give it as a definitive no, or did she just not respond?
She never gave us a definitive no, so it still could happen.
Okay, it could happen.
I hope it does.
You know what? You're right. Yeah, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she'll decide to meet with us at some point.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, though, it does look like, that for whatever reason doesn't want to do the interview.
Yeah, her public appearances cast doubt on her ability to do the job for council, and yet she has all this support.
Yeah.
Across the city. Now, she's probably going to do well in the general election because there are a lot of signs up in her district in the Hindu areas. So she is starting out with a lot of votes. Add to that the establishment votes. It's hard to see her not making the runoff. But we've got 3 competitive candidates, so who is going to make the runoff is kind of up in the air.
So you interviewed Tamam, so tell us about Tamam.
He was the first one out of the gate. So very eager, very bright guy. And the Dallas Morning News endorsement editorial, I think, captured the race pretty well. Mm-hmm. They ended up endorsing Abdul Kabir for the reasons that I think were exemplified in your interview. He is just very distinguished individual and a steadying presence. Yeah. And he does have experience, so he has a lot going for him. And he got the Dallas Morning News endorsement. But the editorial board also went on very glowingly about Tamam Awan. How much he knows about the city, how sharp he is, how impressive he is with his answers. That's what I found in the interview.
During the League of Women's Voters Summit, which you and I both watched, he's very charismatic. I think, like, of all the candidates, he was the most likable. Like, when you just listen to him talk, he seems very genuine. For what that's worth, right? I obviously am always going to be a little bit skeptical of any politician, right? But he seemed like the genuine article. Like what he says, he actually believes. He sold me that he believes in what he says.
I got the same impression. It was funny that Abdul Kabir. We're having a even though this is an exciting race, certainly in 3, also in 6. But certainly in 3, it's not as intense as last year's municipal election, which was really contentious. So we're having a little bit of a calmer cycle, which is a good thing.
It's good for the city, I think. Last year, everybody was sort of on edge. I mean, the prospect of a casino being developed, just had just a lot of people, it felt like an existential emergency, for a lot of folks in the city, including myself, to be honest. I felt like if this happens, this changes the character of the city for generations. And this is a place where I want my kids. I'm obviously raising my kids here. I want my kids to stay here. I want my grandkids to be living near me. And you put a casino up in the city, it changes the character of the city indefinitely. And I guess I'm opining quite a bit on that. But yeah, last year's election, for that reason.
Yeah, it happened in March. Yeah. It happened in this 3-week period. For me, particularly, it was the speed at which this was done. It was kind of, we're going to ram this through in 3 weeks, fundamentally alter the character of the city, potentially. So it galvanized a lot of people, including Tamam. So that came up. Why are you running? Well, there was this issue that galvanized me. So he was very upfront about that. Abdul Kabir really was more reticent to talk about it.
His
kind of vague about it.
His position was, gambling's not legal in Texas, so why argue about it? Which my response to that, and again, just devil's advocate, is, if the city were to approve a gambling zoning ordinance, right, like, or a zoning designation for casino gambling preemptively, then that could be used as a as a way to try to convince or to be utilized in the lobbying efforts in Austin. And and his response to that critique was fair, and I think he said, and I don't think that Irving should be that bargaining chip. So I think he gets a B+ from me on that response.
That's a good grade.
So it's not perfect, but it's okay. I can work with that.
But Tamam did strike me as just someone who would tell you what he thinks, which is an attractive quality because it shows integrity. If you're saying one thing to one person and then saying something else to another person, that's kind of the definition of not having integrity. But it's also the definition of being a good politician because you want to assemble a coalition and go as far as you can, being on the side of people who are thinking about voting for you. Now, there's another aspect to the race, and that is the Islam aspect, because we have a couple candidates who are Muslims in District 3, and the third candidate is not, namely Kajal Patel. So she could galvanize her community, add establishment votes to it, and pick up additional votes of Islamification of Texas has kind of been a big issue since Trump got elected.
Yeah.
And that is national politics, I think, influencing local politics.
Yeah, and Irving is, one of my friends said recently, Irving is a microcosm of the nation. It's very few cities I think could really tout that, because you have such like a multi-diverse city, like all these different ethnic groups and cultures kind of smashed together in a 60 square mile area. Yeah, no, it is really interesting. My kids go to a charter school where, it's probably like whites are probably a minority, at that school. I haven't done a census or anything like that, but it's just it is just the reality of things. Like we live in a very pluralistic area.
So we'll see what happens in this race, but Tamam, Tamam will probably get younger Muslims and Kabir older Muslims, which is to his favor because older people are more likely to vote.
Yeah.
Tamam is a hustling candidate, so he's got more signs up. He's going around campaigning hard, so that's in his favor too. He might make the runoff.
Yeah, I think that if there is a prediction here, there will be a runoff. I would have a hard time thinking that one of these candidates is gonna. Yep. Yeah, I just can't see a world where one of these candidates shows up and pulls out more than 50% of the vote. Again, these things could be very surprising. So, I get
that would be a surprise.
But that would be that would be a real surprise. I would almost say, just based on our initial consensus, it's probably like a 30-30-30 split.
Right.
33-33-33 split. So who knows who has that extra 1%, and then the real question is when they go to the runoff, who's going to be able to pull out the majority?
Right, you kind of have a reset. It's a different electorate. It's a shrunken electorate, and
sometimes it's not. Sometimes more people show up for the runoff. That does happen on occasion. So.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to show up for this race. It's an exciting race, so I think you'll have higher turnout, which probably benefits the challengers. But then the runoff, we're looking at June 13th. So it's a whole nother campaign.
It is, yeah. And, for those of us that have, been involved in city council campaigns, it is like you have to almost like take a breath after the first round. You usually take a week off, and then it's like, and then the next race is it does. By the time you get to the runoff, the entire the set of issues, the set of concerns can be completely different.
Right.
So it is in some ways it can be a completely different election.
It's fun for us. It's not fun for the candidates. They do not want to go to a one-off.
No, I'm going to enjoy it. I mean, this is like it's
really exciting.
This is like
it's
a
really
political Disneyland, for people like you and me. But.
District 6 now.
Okay.
Now that one might go to a runoff just because we have a candidate who withdrew, but not by the 71-day before the election deadline.
So he will be on the ballot.
His name is still on the ballot. Sushil Patel. This is the special election to fill out just the remaining 1 year of the term for Al Zaponte, who's running for mayor, as the front runner. And Sushil Patel is the president of State Bank of Texas. But he decided not to run. But his name is on the ballot. Popular last name. He could pick some votes. Could potentially go to a runoff. But we've got a couple candidates there. And it's also a very interesting race.
Yeah, you have Dana Collins, who is an attorney. He's got a military background. He worked in the JAG Corps. He is kind of a wild card, I guess you could say, only because he's not really running what I would consider to be like a traditionally serious campaign. He's doing it all himself. He's kind of he's taking the shoelace express, as they say. Like, he's just out there doing it on his own, right? As far as I know, there's not a lot of Dana Collins volunteers knocking on doors for him. It's just him, out there. I had a chance to speak to him after the League of Women Voters Forum, and he had mentioned how, he had when he ordered his signs, because he's never done this before, so he's kind of learning as he goes, which, isn't a bad way to do it. If you're going to run for city council, sometimes you just got to kind of jump out there and kind of make a mess of things. Sometimes learn some lessons.
And he may be thinking, I'm running again in a year, because he's not spending any money.
Yeah, and if that's the case, it might be a smart move. I mean, there is an advantage to incumbency, right? Like by having a year on council, but if he's thinking like, okay, well, why would I go and raise like $20,000 for 1 year on council? I can go out there and get my name, get some name recognition, learn some lessons, and then maybe in a year, then come out swinging.
But you were talking about his signs. Speaking of a learning curve.
Yeah. He ordered the one-sided signs, which I would say that's definitely a rookie mistake. But I mean, again, it's kind of, he was laughing at it himself. I think he'd be okay with me, kind of recapping that story. But the fact is it's just. You don't know what you don't know, and you just got to get out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hats off to these candidates putting themselves out there. It's not easy.
No,
it's outside of everybody's comfort zone, but we need good people. We need good people to run.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, I can definitely say from personal experience. I ran for a single member district seat in 22, and it is a whole different reality when it's your name on the sign. When you're the one when you're the one getting calls for interviews, when you're the one that's being talked about on the Citizens of Irving News, Facebook forum.
Wow.
It does. It creates kind of a weight to it that's it's heavy. It's a heavy weight, even though it's a small district. You're only talking like maybe a few thousand people ultimately that really know what's going on, but it does feel like your life is kind of on display for everybody to critique, and that is, it takes kind of a special type of person. You have to have very thick skin, I think, to be really successful in that realm.
So hats off to these candidates. One thing we should mention before we go to Fahad Ahmed, who's favored in this race in District 6 for the 1 year term, is just Dana Collins in his interview with me talking about Senate Bill 840 and disagreeing with what council did to put regulations on the building of apartments, converting office buildings to apartments, which state law said cities can no longer ban. Cities of a certain size, large cities, Irving included, must let developers convert these apartment buildings or these office buildings to apartments. And it is in favor of that, even though it's unanimously opposed by council.
Yeah.
And council members talk about how they're going to go to Austin, stop this push, stripping us of our authority, stripping us of our zoning authority. There's just such a strong sentiment for him to come out and say, well, this was wrong what council did, passing 9-0.
Yeah, which almost never happens. Like,
it was
to get a unanimous vote on council is very rare.
Yeah, it was strange.
Especially for something like this, for something like that.
So I don't know if he had friends in Austin working on this bill, and he was convinced by people that this was a good bill prior to his running. It seems like it. And I don't know if he had second thoughts. In the League of Women's Voter Forum, there was a moment where he's criticizing his opponent, Fahad Ahmed, for the rezoning of Katy Ice House outside of Hackberry that allowed an apartment. So that was kind of an interesting moment of League of Women Voters that doesn't necessarily compute with the answer he was giving me in my interview.
Well, that leads me to think that he's still getting his feet wet. He's still trying to figure out what he stands for, and which doesn't really speak to necessarily in his favor if he doesn't really, because that's a big issue for the city of Irving, like occupancy, housing, density. I think that obviously, I don't think like we have any secrets here that we really don't want to see like Irving turned into Brooklyn. Irving is a suburban community. We like to keep that suburban character as much as possible, and I think the real issue too, and this is something that was talked about quite a bit during the League of Women's Voters Forum, was the prospect of owner occupancy, right? In Irving, for those of you that don't know this, I mean, devote one brain cell to this fact. All right, so in Irving, 2/3 of the housing units are rented to tenants. Okay, so that means that only 1/3 of the housing occupants are actually owner occupied, meaning the people that live in the dwellings actually own the dwelling that they live in. That is the exact inverse of the national average. The national average is about 2/3 of housing units are owner occupied. And the reason that that's a big problem for Irving, like it's a big problem now, and it's a big problem in the long run, that the people that actually live here don't necessarily, they're not laying down roots the way that you would hope that people do when they move to a city. And so as a result, they're not as invested in the city that they're living in, because if things go bad, well, they just pick up and they move somewhere else. Whereas if you own something, if you own a house or own a condo or whatever type of housing unit it is, it forces you to take ownership of your city, to make sure that the decisions that are made, that there's good stewardship, that you're not just looking at the now, but you're looking at what's this going to do 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. So there was a lot of discussion about owner occupancy, and I think that the general consensus was you want to see more people owning the places that they live in. But yeah, in the case of Dana Collins, it seems like he's really, it's hard to pin down what exactly his position is on that. I don't know if this is true or not, because we couldn't verify it, but we had understand like the Association of like apartment developers, which I can't remember the exact name of this organization, had potentially endorsed Dana Collins. I don't know if that's true or not, and so I don't want to...
No, it's not true.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
They've officially endorsed Alice Aponte for mayor, but
interesting.
Not any city council candidates in Irving, in other places, but not in Irving.
Okay, good. All right, well, I'm glad. Thanks for clearing that up, because I don't want to start a rumor when it's unfounded. So,
and it's funny that they're endorsing Al. Too, because he's also shares this concern about owner occupancy, but he's also going to win, so that's why.
Well,
endorsing him.
Yeah, I hate to we hate to spoil the ending here, but that's that's probably what's happening in the mayoral race. Do we want to continue talking about District
Just
6?
a few, yeah, just a few words on
Sure.
Fahad Ahmed. Very impressive guy. So he's the president of the Valley Ranch Master Association. So basically, very large HOA, a mini city, and just gave a lot of examples. I refer people to the interview, but a lot of examples of him getting results
Yeah.
in that position and working with the city. And when asked the question, why do you want to run for city council? And he said, it's an extension of what I'm doing already. So very impressive guy with an impressive record. And
Yeah, I mean,
it's also...
I think one example was he wanted to get a crosswalk over at the high school, right? And for whatever reason just wasn't on the city's top priority list, and so he ended up raising funds independently to get the crosswalk installed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little thing, it's crosswalk, but it's how many people would have done that on their own initiative?
Yeah.
That's kind of
really,
rare. So
really
I will
impressive.
say that is an impressive. I guess you could say an impressive accomplishment to tout.
He's also facing this anti-Muslim sentiment, and that could potentially hurt him in the race. He's as of late running to the left. He has yard signs up, and I believe they say "Keep ICE out," if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. We definitely need to talk about that, because these signs showed up after your interview with him, right? So you did not have a chance to really talk to him about this issue and what exactly he means by this. But do we have any insight into what he's talking about keeping ICE out of Irving?
Well, you were saying before it's ambiguous. What does that mean? Because there's different levels of cooperation of municipal police with ICE. And currently, we kind of have the jail level of cooperation. So when there's a crime committed and it's someone not here legally, that gets reported to ICE. Now, there's a way that could be stepped up, and there could be a grant given for affirmative cooperation with ICE beyond just that jail level reporting. And then there's also the active non-cooperation Minneapolis level.
Where they're basically just not just choosing not to report anything.
Not reporting criminals.
Yeah.
Not reporting criminals.
Yeah.
So what does that mean exactly? Does it mean he's not in favor of the enhanced cooperation? What does it mean he wants non-cooperation?
Yeah.
So that's not clear.
And I think that this is an issue that a lot of voters don't really know a lot about. I mean, it's the anti-ICE sentiment has been, it's been a national talking point. Obviously, it's being used as a, I guess you could say, like as a wedge issue leading into the national midterm elections, the congressional elections, and the midterms. And so, and it isn't terribly unusual for city councilmen to kind of adopt these issues or adopt these sentiments to try to drive votes their way. I guess my concern is I don't know what his play is here, or what exactly he's entailing. I think a lot of folks, when they hear about this issue, they imagine like some of our police officers like being taken off of their regular beat, like to go down to like El Rancho, and like start rounding up people, and checking for their citizenship or their legal immigrant or their legal residency status. But that's not what's going on. It's just a matter of how much the city is willing to cooperate with ICE in reporting local crime to them. I'm not going to take any positions on that, only just because it's just I truly see I see both sides of the issue on this one. I really do. I think that on the one hand, it is important to make sure that like I said, like the people that are that are living in our country are legally here. I also know that there's been kind of like a salutary neglect of immigration status for like the last 30 or 40 years. So there's a lot of like, arguably very good people that are living among us that have not rectified their legal status. So I see that side of the equation as well. So I personally kind of have middle of the road view of these situations, right? But in terms of where Ahmed stands, right? Like what exactly is he trying to do here? Like what's the political objective? And the only thing I can imagine is he's trying to garner probably support from Democrats, right? There's probably a lot of folks, probably a lot of folks in the Muslim community, and there might be a lot of folks too in the Hindu community as well that probably agree with that. And maybe he's trying to combat some of this anti-Muslim sentiment by putting that on his signs to say like, oh, okay, well, he's a Muslim. I'm just speaking in the voice of random voter, right? He's a Muslim. I don't like Muslims, but I don't want ICE coming into my neighborhood, so I'm going to vote for him as opposed to, the white guy.
Yeah.
And so that to me it seems like it is definitely an interesting political move to make.
Yeah.
And it probably will help him if he can sway some Hindu votes in his direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one last point on him that should be mentioned before we talk about the mayor's race is just not only Valley Ranch Metro Association president, but he's also on planning and zoning, which is the major commission of the city. You really have to know the city really well to be on P&Z. And he was on it during the casino fight and was under immense pressure and voted against the casino. That's not something he brought up in our interview. So Tamam was talking about this, but it wasn't something that he talked about. So I just found that interesting, that lack of even mentioning it, much less emphasizing it.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, mayor's race.
Yeah.
So you already gave the spoiler.
Sorry. No, yeah, I mean,
this is less exciting.
It's more consequential because like the mayor, he represents. It's an at-large position, obviously, so everybody gets to vote for mayor. Obviously, the mayor can really set the agenda on where things go. There's on the one hand, like the mayor is just another council member, but the mayor does have some special. I guess you could say some special powers, some special privileges. Obviously, as a figurehead, the mayor does kind of have like, I guess, the proverbial bully pulpit of being the mayor. We got to see a little bit of that during the Great Casino Showdown, a year ago. I'll leave that at that. But yeah, I think that it's very consequential. But at the same time, this race seems like it was over before it even started, and I don't mean to like disparage or insult any of the other candidates, but I'm just having a hard time seeing a world where Al Zapata doesn't win this thing.
Well, at one point, Herb Geers was in the race, our former mayor for 2 terms.
Yeah.
A couple of decades ago, and it was looking like it was going to.
That would have been
a real contest.
Yeah, that would have been interesting, to say the least. It would have made the race. It would have made the race a little bit more interesting. I'm personally, I think Al Zapanta's, somebody that can be. He seems like he listens to all sides, and he's somebody that can be worked with, and that probably. Because of that, I think that's the reason why it looks like Al Zapanta's kind of running away with this thing, because there's nobody that's like really like fearful of an Al Zapata mayorship.
He is a good politician.
He really is. Yeah, and he's again we interviewed him, about a couple weeks ago, right? And he's just so likable. When you meet him in person, it was really. I don't know. I was kind of criticizing myself because it was such a softball interview, but it's just one of these things. Like he does command a lot of human respect whenever you meet him. He's lived a full life. He's done a lot of really great things with his life. He's served his country and in the military. He's been his professional background is diverse and interesting. He's been in charge of a lot of different things.
He's been on the national stage.
Yeah, exactly.
One interesting fact: he was a White House fellow, and then he stayed on. He was one of only 2 White House fellows that stayed on, and he worked on the president's advance team.
Yeah.
And he was there next to President Gerald Ford when President Ford was shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he went up. So a few years ago, he went up for kind of the commemoration of this event at the Ford Library. So he is, on that level, on that national level, and Irving is kind of lucky to have someone with that much experience, kind of interested in Irving politics.
Well, and it is one of the things I think I really appreciate about him is that he has this unique ability to kind of bring people together, because he's not controversial at heart. He's really not a controversial candidate at all, and that speaks to his political skills. But it's kind of nice, especially after such a contentious 2025, it's nice to be able to kind of walk into this election with just a feeling like we can take a year off. We don't have to do.
Not as contentious.
We don't have to do another. Who knows what the future holds, but at least for the moment, we can kind of relax a little bit, and just kind of enjoy our lives instead of having to get super amped up about the existential threats that are facing Irving, right? Because again, you get the impression that he's going to, he's ultimately going to listen. He's going to make good decisions. He's not going to freeze people out of the political process. So yeah, I think that's all speaks well for Sapanta. Interestingly enough, in the interview, I actually was not going to ask him about the casino issue, but he brought it up on his own, which was interesting. And he did actually say some things. He was concerned about the effects that a casino would have on the University of Dallas, which we all have a love. Well, I have a particular love for. I didn't go there. I'm not an alumni, but I have a lot of love for that university and what it means for our community. So the fact that he could recognize that having a casino that close to the university is a bad thing. It could have like I said, a fatal. It could be a fatal blow for a private, for a religious private educational institution. And for those of you that don't know, University of Dallas has been here for 70 years. So that is, really a cornerstone of the Irving community. That's been here just as it was built there. I think before the Cowboys built their stadium there, before Texas Stadium even came to town. So. So there's that to be said, and it was nice of him to offer up that unsolicited piece of information. I think that he was really trying to kind of convince at least the folks in our community that this is something that he does care about. So that it did carry some weight with me for sure.
Good. You interviewed the other 2 candidates, or no, just. 2 interviews, but it was with the same candidate.
Yeah, that's correct. So we talked to.
So tell us about that. So there is another candidate we have not interviewed.
Yeah, and I guess we'll read her statement.
Janae Jackson.
Yes.
Who has a bright future in front of her, it seems. She's young. She did do an interview with Colonel Allen West for his podcast.
Isn't that interesting? Because he's a county figure, but she's kind of hard to pigeonhole, and maybe that's by design. She does seem to have some political skill.
Oh yeah,
and but she's also seems like she's running kind of like a race. I don't see a lot of signs up for her. I don't see people doing a lot of door knocking. I don't know if she's raised any serious money. To run for mayor, you've got to have a ground game of some sort, right? You can't just throw your name on a ballot and do some, go to some forums and just expect it all to kind of work out. Like you have to go out and address the voters. But
Alan West asked her, well, "What's next for you if you don't win?" And she said, "Oh, probably serve on a city board."
Okay.
Which I hope she gets to do.
Yeah.
It's doing it a little bit backwards. Normally, you would serve on the boards, get experience, and then run for mayor.
Yeah, you actually would probably run for city council first, and then run for mayor if you do it the traditional path. Now, again,
Correct.
not everybody does it that way, right? I mean, like I kind of did it backwards too. I jumped into the city council race prior to serving on any boards. Looking back, maybe it would have been good to get on a board first. But there were reasons. There are reasons why you do things. It's not a bad way to kind of throw yourself onto the scene, though. I mean, that's
that's what she's doing.
Really, there's really nothing you can really lose. But anyhow, she wrote you were trying to get her to the interview, and she writes back. She says, "This is all I have to say. To be honest, I don't want to do the interview." So you got to give credit to her, just her candor. Like she's just very straightforward. But thank you for your desire to include me. Our generation spoke in the survey you conducted. I don't know anything about the survey.
Well, it's the city survey that we were
the city survey. Got
covering,
it. Okay, so she's speaking to you as if you're part of the city. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. You see how many of us are tired. You know about the water cutoffs, the lack of code compliance. You know about the lack of affordable housing, and our generation continues to suffer economically at the hands of rich alliances and greed. You see our jobs going to foreigners with H-1Bs. It's not just Frisco, it's Irving too. And the casino, if legalized, will drive away our headquartered corporations. A lot is on my heart, but it only matters if I can actually help. I may not be the most experienced, but I have the most compassion, and I'm aware of the issues our residents are facing. Again, thanks for the opportunity, but I have to decline. So anyhow, that is her statement to the Irving Herald, and you have it.
I'd love to see young people running. I mean, I think the issues that young people face are very different from older, established, retirees that are not seeing the pressures that young people are under. So she's to be commended for running, putting herself out there, and hopefully she has a bright future. But having more young people involved, I think, is very important. And we have Luis Canosa on council.
That's true. Yeah, I think he has the record for the youngest city council, member probably in the history of the city. I think Randy Randall, he was a city councilman at the age of 30, which at that time was quite young. I think that was probably back in the 90s when that happened. But Luis Canosa, he won that when he was 24. Is that right? So
I believe so. And it brings variety of viewpoints. You don't want all the same viewpoint.
Yeah.
Pouring into the discussion.
And it was a different kind of an electorate too. I think in 2024 when he ran, it was interesting watching he's got some unique political skills that I don't think the folks that are traditionally involved in Irving politics really understood or predicted, and so that's been interesting. And to his credit, he was the one that was kind of the whistleblower on the casino situation as well. He's the one that got people energized about it to come out and make their voices heard, and I think that did make a difference. So again, like that youthful energy, and again, it's and it does piss people off sometimes too. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that.
Everybody says young people should get involved in politics until they actually do and are successful. And then suddenly it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You don't have any experience.
Yeah.
So again, hats off to Jeanne for running.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, Jeanne is, I have to say, like, her campaign's been the more interesting one to watch. She posted a video on her social media, but it was taken down almost immediately. But I saw it, and it was this AI video of kind of like a Jasmine Crockett kind of like music video. Like it was like a gospel anthem. It was a sight to behold. Like, and I was so entertained by it. I was actually disappointed that she took it down because it was so interesting to look at. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't find a way to record it just because it was so interesting. But I think that probably goes to show that like I think she wants to do some great, interesting things, but I think she's also a little gun shy. Like I think coming and doing an interview with us, I think she would have found it to be fun, but also helpful. And it's also good to just kind of get out there and face questions and again like kind of like what I said about Dana Collins. Like sometimes you just kind of like got to insert yourself into the situation. Sometimes it can be a little bit messy, but there's no better way to learn. And there's very little downside to it. I think a lot of times people look at you and me, well, that was a gutsy things to do,
Yep.
the kind of man in the arena
Yeah.
kind of thinking, if you want to bring Teddy Roosevelt into this, but it does take guts to kind of throw yourself into the arena and do something interesting. So hats off to Janae. I don't think you're going to win this race, but that being said, I do hope that you continue to stay involved, and
Likewise.
I'm hopeful to see what her future holds. So
Likewise. And then there's Dr. Olivia.
yes,
Closing word.
Doctora.
Tell us what the Spanish interview was all about.
Yeah, so we decided to do both an English and Spanish interview. That's one of the few skills I bring to the table here at the Irving Herald. I think that's why I'm here. Basically, I'm the Spanish interpreter, right? But I did have a chance to do an interview with her in Spanish and in English. And most of the interview, I think, was the same. We did in the Spanish interview, we actually decided to dive into a couple of controversial topics. We talked a bit about the Irving Library, the issues with, which we've talked about before, in our separate podcast about the obscene materials. And I have to say, like, she's a solid, like, she came off to me as pretty socially conservative in the sense that she's concerned about the innocence of children. She's concerned about what these obscene materials just being made readily available in the library, what it does to the minds of children, how it influences them. I'm married to a Latina, and so I really understand the Latino community pretty well. But they're socially they're very conservative, and socially they really do believe that maintaining children's innocence is so important because it impacts the way you think for the rest of your life, right? Which is essentially, like, arguably why these books are being placed in the library. What's the motive behind it is to change the way people think about things.
Crazy.
And so I think she gave some very good feedback on that. She's very big into diversity. She touts that. She thinks it's important to listen to people. She talked a bit about some of the interactions that she had, going and meeting with the Muslim communities up north, at the mosque. I forgot the name of the mosque up north, but I should know that off the top of my head.
Just the Valley Ranch.
Yeah,
Mosque.
the Valley Ranch Mosque, and she was talking about how she had a really good experience up there. My impression of her is I think she's really enjoying her race. Like, she seems to be really having a good time running for this. She enjoys meeting all the different people. She enjoys giving her feedback. And good on her for that. Again, I don't see a ton of organization on her end. I see a lot of Zapata signs around, which means, like, Zapanta's out there raising money. He's got, supporters going out and knocking on doors and, putting up signs. And I don't see her doing a ton of that, So, again, you got to have ground game. And that's really where, there could be a lot of, there could be some people that just go out and just vote for her because she's Latino, and there could be, I think when she ran against Stoffer, 6 years ago, she got 46% of the vote in that election, and she probably had the similar strategy as to what she has now, and there probably just there's probably just an anti-Stoffer sentiment, and she just benefited from that. So maybe she picks up an anti-Zapata sentiment. I don't know. I don't know if there is much of an anti-Zapata sentiment, but
Well, that was a different electorate during COVID.
that's true. That is true.
I believe it was a November election.
That's right. The
So
2020
completely
election was in November.
different
You're
electorate.
right. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, so it's I guess we should also point that out too. Like, your municipal electorate is completely different than your general election electorate. Your general election people you have the partisans that are coming out to vote for their side.
Completely different
And
than the low turnout municipal.
Municipals are people that are dialed in. They're paying attention to what's going on, which is like 5% of the electorate usually. Maybe if you get 9%, like that's a massive turnout, right?
And that was the turnout for the municipal runoff in 2025 was 9%.
Yeah, between
this massive wave of enthusiasm, it was 9% turnout.
9% turnout, yeah. So again, it's just whenever you get those kind of numbers, right? You just don't know what you're dealing with in those situations. Like, and it's very difficult for these city council and mayoral candidates to fundraise and to get word out at that level. So there's a lot of people that probably went out there and said, well, she's got a Spanish last name, I'll just vote for her, and or she's a woman and I'll vote for her. Like they probably knew nothing about the mayoral race and just went out and just pulled the lever for Olivia. I don't know. I mean, maybe there was there could have been more to it than that. Maybe I should give her more credit. But I guess my perspective is there's not a lot of ground game going on. She's having a good time with it. She's making some connections.
She's the anti-Kajal Patel.
Yeah.
Who is not having a good time at all.
Yeah. She's very personable, and right. I really. I'd never met her before, but it was nice making a friend. Like she's somebody that I could see kind of enjoying a friendship with over the years, and she's a very sanguine type person, a very people person, as am I. So we make friends easily. So good on her for going out and making some friends. Maybe she'll serve on a board. That would be interesting.
Well, with that, election day is May 2nd.
Yes.
So see you at the polls.
Yeah. What's the time? Like, where are we? We are almost an hour into this. Okay. So obviously we had a lot to talk about. I guess the next time we'll speak, we'll be talking about the returns, and what actually happened.
Another issue of the Irving Herald is off the press. First copies of Irving's newspaper were distributed the very day lots were auctioned off to start the city of Irving.
I came in this country with an American dream that I was able to achieve with putting in hard work. My wife and I, about probably 14 years ago, we were on top of Ranch View and MacArthur looking down the hill. And I told my wife that one day we're going to buy a house in Valley Ranch because I loved this neighborhood so much. And I was able to afford it at that time. Now that is not the case. Some parts of Irving have become neighborhoods for elites only. So we have to change that. Just like I was able to achieve my American dream, I want everybody at every income level to be able to achieve that same American dream. We need to partner with the developers to make sure that we are able to build homes that are for our seniors and for folks that are just starting out and they're able to put their roots in City of Irving. That doesn't mean that those are cheaply made homes. They're just smaller homes that may not have the higher ticket items or higher margin, but we as a council need to send a very strong signal to the developers that this is what we're looking for. We need to identify those areas. We have some areas with apartments, and the problem is not the apartment dwellers, it's those apartments that are cheaply made and they deteriorate after 10 to 20 years. We need to be able to identify those areas and then make sure that we're able to put good homes for people so we can have economical growth in the area.
Let me translate that for you, because that means yes apartments. And that means yes apartments in my neighborhood, because while my opponent was on the zoning commission, he was instrumental in approving the Pearl Landing, moving in of an ice house, a bar, and an apartment complex not very far from Hackberry Creek at all. So now I've got to take it on myself to talk to the developer and see if we can move to things that will be helpful and appropriate for that neighborhood, whether that's condos, townhouses, some form of ownership. It is crucial that we build communities of homeowners that are investing within Irving. It's specifically for District 6. If we need to respond to the market demand for more housing, we have done that with property improvement districts, PIDs, and TIFs, and transportation zones. We need to use these incremental taxes to build the types of communities, successful ones like the Bridges, Campions. These are all places where we have recently built new communities of homeowners who will be able to build District 6 and Irving in a stronger way.
And let's move to our mayoral candidates now, please. And to remind you, the question is, do you support increasing higher density and affordable housing in Irving? Why or why not?
My story is rooted in hard work and deeply commitment serving this community. As a mother, I want my 11-year-old daughter to understand that women have a voice. Women have a voice, and they deserve the seat at the table. I'm running because I want every family, no matter their background, to be feel represented, heard, and supported. Thank you.